Put us on mute. There we go.
Here they are.
Hello and welcome. Welcome everyone. I see Doraya and Reed and Suzanne, Natasha, and welcome to our webinar today.
Hi, Lori. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Be great if everyone would put in the chat box where you're calling from, say hello. We're going to start with let me get that pop up out of there. Hi from snowy Chicago.
Suzanne, I'm in snowy Chicago too. We'll have to swap stories sometime.
Yes, it's beautiful here.
It is beautiful, yeah.
And Ronan is calling from Brussels.
Hi, everyone.
Santa Barbara. It's not snowy in Santa Barbara, I'm pretty sure. And Anne from Somerset, Ola from Lisbon, and Doraya from warm but not so sizzling Dubai, I see. Oxfordshire, Dublin. Hi hi Mark in Dublin. So everyone, this is welcome to our Rewiring Workplaces webinar. We'll get started with where we're going. Rewiring Workplaces is a series of webinars that we're offering from Shook Svensson. We'll be doing one a month, approximately one a month throughout this year. And it's a new format. We've been offering these webinars for almost a year and a half. And it used to be me talking with people who showed up, those who dared to turn on their video and have a conversation. Others just wanted to be passive listeners. And now we're recording on Zoom. We're also live streaming on YouTube, just so you know. So I had this, I was a guest on a webinar in November where I got to have a conversation with the host, and I loved it. And I thought, okay, I'm changing the format of our free webinars. I thought, okay, we're going to do some conversations instead of forcing everybody who shows up to be in the conversation. So I thought I would have a series conversations, bring in a thought leader in a field, and we just talk about something that has something to do with rewiring workplaces. So perhaps a little theme of neuroscience and a lot about workplaces and what we all do in workplaces. Clay and I will be having, Clay Stelzer, I'll introduce him in just a moment. He and I will be having a conversation, mostly the two of us. Happy to be influenced by your comments, your questions, and then at about 30-40 minutes, something like that, we'll open it up, see if anybody wants to come on camera or on, and say something and participate, ask a question, get involved. But mostly it'll be Clay and I having this conversation. So here's Clay Stelzer. He is a coach, a team coach, and has been working for organizations for the past some years, and he's going to say more specific about himself. And currently he's working in his own company called 1560. And I'm really excited, Clay, about you and your company and what you're doing. And I know you'll tell us more. And then, you work with leaders and teams. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if we can get us spotlighted, or Frodo's in the background doing some magic, trying to spotlight us. And spotlighting me anyway. So Clay, tell me, tell us more about you.
Okay, fun. I love talking about me. What's important? What's important for you to know about me? Well, I think you said some of the things that are important. I wake up every day and I coach people. What gives me the most life is helping other individuals and teams an opportunity to step into their own lives a little bit more. And so, Laura, you and I met, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. When I was at Salesforce building a team coaching practice. And it was such a fun experience for me, helping teams begin to see what it was like to be a team. And let's begin talking about what it is to be a team rather than just being heads down doing the work. And through my own journey, through my own falling on my face as a team member and seeing the importance of having these kinds of open, candid conversations with people you're working with, I just, I'm kind of dedicating my life to facilitating these conversations because they're the same conversations that I needed for myself when I was working with teams, and then I still need myself being able to share what it's really like being me working with other people. And so, yeah, my company 1560, myself and the network of coaches that I have, we practice facilitating these conversations with leaders of organizations and their teams so people can ultimately do better work, feel more connected with their teammates in that work, hopefully drop some of the drama and the stress that traditionally keeps people in the mud. And maybe if we do our jobs well, you might have some fun in the process. So in a nutshell, I do all this stuff again because I need it for my own self and my own sanity. And so that's why I'm excited to help others with the same sorts of discussions.
Yeah. So at Salesforce some years ago, you were starting to bring team code. You recognized this and you came up with a great model and recognition of what teams need. And then you started playing with that. So you were trained at CRR Global and ORSC, right? Organization Relationship Systems Coaching. And you started bringing that to your teams you were working with. So you were partly doing this creative work, right? Or design work, and also team coaching. And then you kind of shifted over to being a full-time team coach. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so I was an innovation consultant. I was doing the work that many of my future clients were doing. And I just remember having the experience of like the work was really cool, but I was really anxious. And I noticed that whenever my boss would enter into the room, I'd get real tense and tight. And that just affected my output, my ability to be creative. And so I just got really interested in what could be different here on the way I'm interacting with my team. And so I hired a coach, and I went through my second or third life crisis at that point in my life. But I learned that, being able to speak freely about some of these things with the people I'm working with was my way out of some of the anxiety that I was experiencing. So I started training and learning about how to do this. Again, partly for myself because I needed it, but partly because I just cared about all the people I was working with. Mm. And you're right. So I enrolled in CRR Global's ORSC program, Organizational and Relationship Systems Coaching, for those of you that aren't familiar. And I just started playing with these philosophies around team coaching with the teams that were with the company called Gravity Tank. And it just kind of stuck. People started to see some value in, again, talking about what it was like to be on a team. And then out of left field, Salesforce came and purchased Gravity Tank. And so at that point, we had a big opportunity to begin sort of extending this culture and way of working to all of the different innovation teams within the organization. And
so you were coaching at Gravity Tank before that was bought by Salesforce. I was thinking it was the other way around.
Well, I was just doing it. I wasn't doing it full time. I was just doing it when I had time, because this was just a passion project for me. Yeah. Like I still was a full-time consultant. And nights and weekends, I was getting trained. And when you're getting trained, you need to practice these skills. So I would just start bringing it into my own team. And then others heard about it. And so if I had an hour here and there, I'd go and just lead a session. And people began to really appreciate the nature of the conversation that we were having.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, quite likely a number of people who came to this call are interested in how you start creating a team coaching culture within an organization. And I think you partly answered that question right there. Is just, well, there's a little bit of dabbling, try it out. People learn that it works, and then the word spreads. Like the great work speaks for itself, and people probably being relieved that they can now talk as a human being rather than having to be something else or something perfect. And then it spreads. That's kind of what I hear you say.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing, so I was really, really lucky that I had a leader that he didn't care where business success came from. He just cared about business success. And in fact, he wasn't really a touchy-feely guy that liked talking about his feelings. But I just started playing with this stuff, and he kept hearing how others were valuing it. Yeah. And so I just credit him, honestly, for listening to how his teams and how his reports were beginning to find value in this and saying, hey, listen, Clay, I don't care what anyone does as long as it's supporting our business. And it seems like this is, so go for it. And that's what I think really led to the evolution and to the growth of the platform. And not every leader is like that. You know, a lot of leaders have in their minds the way that work should be done. And a lot of the types of conversations we're talking about, Lori, and that you and I bring to people are not the traditional type of business conversation. So it does require a little bit of courage and a little bit of buy-in from someone at the top, at least to experiment, to see, is this something that will support our teams to do the work that we're hoping they do?
I think that's pretty key, is the courage and buy-in from someone at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be I don't really like the word sponsor, but in a way it needs to be sponsored by somebody who says, yeah, this is good for us and works for us, and let's keep doing it.
Absolutely.
So we need to keep finding those people.
We do. Now, here's the fun part. The more that I do this work and the more people that I have engage in it, the more people that it's like almost like this, finally, I have space where I can share what's really going on with me and do it in a safe environment. And so the more people that go through these programs, I just feel like it's naturally wanting to grow, and more people are getting excited about this idea.
Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of be on that ride. And I know you see all of this as well in all of your work. I mean, think about, so those of you that don't know what Lori did and does at Salesforce, I mean, basically she is running this type of work for all of the innovation teams in EMEA and in Asia for Ignite, the innovation group. And the only reason that's happening is because people see Lori and her team, creating that kind of value that people really appreciate.
And this is your legacy that we are continuing. You're no longer at the company, but we're continuing your legacy, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Really fun. And but there was a place where it became went from you dabbling a little bit to you being a full-time coach. Again, it was the leader who said, yeah, this is a good thing. And then you created structure, and this is how we do things. And that just became a normal part of project teams. And these are project teams, just so everyone knows, these are project teams that form and work together for 3 to 6 months. And something like that, short term, a lot of the same kind of people that come together and then go off and maybe form in a different configuration. And, and so a lot of times it was the same people knowing the work, but they're in a different configuration.
Yeah.
Constellation, we might say. And it's not like they can borrow from what they did last time, because it's a new group, really, and start over.
Yeah, right. So I put some structure around it. And here's what I would recommend anyone that's looking to bring this into their organization. It can be scary and intimidating and even potentially awkward to begin asking your teammates and your staff to begin communicating in a way that is foreign, communicating in a way that's open, potentially vulnerable, that's challenging. So to enable that kind of shift, I think what's really important is structure. Like, how can I create this in a way that's systematic, that people can understand it very clearly? Like, here are the 3 steps you need to know. Here's how we're going to move this thing out. If it's really open-ended, it makes embracing a scary thing scarier. So I think one of the things that I learned at Salesforce is, and my boss, again, who's a brilliant guy, he helped me create this structure. It's, let's roll this out in a way that it doesn't require a lot of thinking about how we're going to build this in. Let's really handhold people through the process. And I think that's what, again, led to it being, it led to people trying it. Once people try it, people get it, generally speaking, and they want more of it. But getting people over that initial hump, I think requires a little bit of handholding. Yeah.
And the handholding is structure, telling people what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. It's contained to these sections of time, short sessions.
Yeah, I mean, so we did a lot of, yeah, I mean, in pure corporate form, we had PowerPoint decks that talked about the structure, and we had meetings that helped people understand why we were doing this. We had quotes from people that were influential in the organization that already saw the value. And what really helps is if you get the leader talking about the value that they see, that offers permission to the people underneath that leader to begin trying something different.
Yeah.
And I think all of that really has led, at least while I was there, had led to the expansion of the program. Yeah.
So it's kind of even though you're within the company, it's still a bit of a marketing effort.
Yeah, right. I mean, we always got to be marketers. Now, I don't love spending my time marketing this stuff. I really love to just have people experience it because then you don't need to market it. So for me, it's just how can we create an environment where people can have the experience and then they can determine whether they want to continue it or not. And Lori, I know you know this because we talk about this a lot. I'm going to go ahead and speak for you, but it's no fun and it's not friendly to invite someone into a coaching type experience that doesn't want to be coached.
Yeah.
So all I ask is that people give it a shot. And then if it's not something you want to do, then the worst thing any coach or any organization can do is jam this stuff down people's throats. And I know we have that in common.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like people's brains clench up and then it's impossible to do the work because they don't want to be there and there's resistance and not here. Yeah, absolutely.
And Lori, I'm curious, what would you add to that? I mean, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. You work with many, many organizations. So besides the structure, what's led you to success in sort of getting organizations to embrace this stuff?
Well, I think that bit that you said about buy-in from the top, I mean, that's if there are some organizations I've worked for where there isn't quite buy-in from the top and we're working with mid-level and it kind of works for a while, but as soon as we go away, like the whole effort goes away, it's like everything changes. Like, whoa, I thought we were really making some inroads, or we have a top leader who is buying in and then that person leaves and somebody else comes and the programs then leave and it's like everything just disappears. So buy-in from the top, or at least top of a department, if not top of a whole organization.
Yeah.
Curious people who are a bit open-minded, willing to experience. And there's a lot of those. I think we can go into a corporate environment sometimes and everybody looks all buttoned down, but you just loosen the tie a little bit and human beings pop out. And you just have to keep seeing those people and invite them out.
I think that's the thing. Coaching can be such a complicated idea. There's so many tools, there's so many different ways you can get trained, so many different schools of coaching. But my teacher, one of my, a teacher of mine I've learned so much from, he says so simply, human beings just want to be seen and understood.
Yeah.
So if I can create that in a room within a team, regardless of any of the fancy schmancy coaching stuff, if I can just create space for people to really be seen and understood, that in and of itself can transform how a team operates. And that's actually the most fun thing for me to do anyway. Yeah.
Recently, you were telling me about a team you worked with. I believe they were a team of leaders, and we won't mention the company or anything, but you told me I think you worked with 3 questions. Sorry, springing this on you.
3 questions.
But they were just like, you said you just had a couple of simple questions. It was about being seen and understood. And it was just, if you really knew me, I know that's one of your favorite questions.
Yeah, so right. I mean, I got called in with this company. They had a leadership team that was a little clunky working together. And I was thinking about all these different, again, fancy tools I could bring in to talk about all kinds of different things. But we spent the entire time together with each person simply answering the prompt. If you were to really know me right now, you would know. And then they finished that statement. And the rule was no one could say anything. No one could ask questions. Everyone just simply listened. And then what makes this exercise really fun is at the end, after everyone has just simply listened, then there's an opportunity. I think the second question was, the second prompt, everyone else had an opportunity then to say, when I heard you say, fill in the blank. I had the thought, the feeling, the body sensation. And so what happens is people can really begin to share what's really going on for them, but separate them so each person is taking responsibility for their own experience. And that topic there's a lot of depth that can happen there. But if you can create space for people to really share what's going on, both on the offering end and the receiving end, that practice can be so great for maintaining intimacy and communication. And so, yeah, that's all we did for the 2 hours. And they walked out of there, and the emails I got, like, wow, we've never been as connected as we are now. And it just took a couple questions to create that level of intimacy.
So it really was just two.
There may have been a third. I don't remember, but
Anyway.
maybe the third was, what I don't want you to know about me is, that's a fun question. Or what you might want to know about me if you're going to work really well with me is, those are all really fun questions. It may have been some version of that, I'm not sure. But again, if you're going to answer those questions, you just keep separate the questions and the response from everyone else in the room.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that it sounds like it's really simple, and it is really simple. And it also takes an experienced facilitator, excuse me, to hold that. To create the space, to create the safety, to bring the energy. I know your energy is always very calm and chilled. And if somebody comes in really intense, you're not going to be able to ask those questions. But just that calm, cool, collected nature and a confidence with your questions or with the statements, the prompts. And I think don't sell yourself short. That's fancy stuff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think you're right. Like, coming in with a sense of confidence. You want to know what? So yes, confidence helps, but what I've learned, sometimes I'm not confident. Sometimes I'm terrified to show up in a room of people because that's just happens to be, it's Tuesday at 4:00, and for whatever reason I'm anxious about something. Yeah. And I've got a job to do. I've got a room of people to be with. But here's what makes that work. It's modeling what it means to be revealed. So I might come in and sit with a group of people, and I'm going to, I always like to practice and do anything I ever ask anyone else to do. So I might say, hey, I just, in the spirit of being revealed in this group, I just want to share that right now I'm noticing I'm really nervous. My body's trembling a little bit. And I get like that when I'm in front of a room of people. And when I do that, I think that sets the stage and it creates a little bit of comfort for other people to come forward. So that's always a thing that's on my mind. How do I be the being that I'm asking everyone else to be?
Yeah. So possibly some courage.
Yeah.
And confidence, at least courage.
Yeah, definitely. Both of them are pretty helpful.
And commitment and integrity. A lot of words I would put to that. Yeah. So team facilitation, team coaching could be as simple as that, but it's not to be taken lightly. There's some skill in just holding it.
Yeah. And so the other piece to that is, and I'm going to toss the puck to you on this one because I know how passionate you are. We both are, but how passionate you are about this is the idea of helping people understand how their brain is working.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we get triggered, when we're defensive, when we're in some way or state that is creating some discord with someone else, there's actually a reason why. So Lori, I'd love for you to share a little bit about, or let me ask a question. How have you been successful at helping people begin to understand why it is that they're behaving a certain way on their team?
Feels like a big question, but
no pressure.
No pressure. So teaching people about their brain, one, understanding this is a social brain. And to say something like, oh, don't worry about what other people think is a ridiculous thing to say because we are always worried about what other people think because it's built in. So helping people understand that, helping people understand that we're triggered off of each other all the time and we're biased towards negativity and fear-based reactions. And that creates, some tension, which is contagious. And then tension will bounce around the team. And it's, Yeah, I've it's been exciting having groups of people learn the basic neuroscience, what we call rewired work, and understand that. And I just got feedback from a team, a group that had learned a lot of the brain basics about how to be calm, cool, collected, and not get into their triggered states. And there was 24 of these people who learned all of this, and they were just having a conversation about how COVID was impacting. Anyway, it doesn't matter the details. It was an intense conversation. It was a pretty large group of people, 24 in one conversation, and it could have gotten really hot and sticky. But they had learned all this brain work, and they were so the team leader was so appreciative that they could actually really go deep in this conversation, this relatively large group of people who used to get really triggered by things and be attached to their viewpoints. And they were able to let those go and really listen. And I mean, it's hard to listen, but teaching people about one, our attention span, but also the blocks that keep us from listening and how to let go of those and embrace the calmness so they can open their minds and listen to each other. I think it's just fantastic that people, when they put that into practice, it's very exciting, and the rewards are amazing. I think just hearing about that is like, yeah, it's great.
I agree. I use the word normalizing a lot
Mm.
when I talk when I talk about coaching, but helping people understand that you're a human being and human beings are designed, you already mentioned this, to get triggered, be defensive, and then just to help them understand there are certain sorts of situations that our brain is constantly looking for, and when they show up, we want to protect ourselves naturally. And so helping people understand that when it occurs, it's like I don't have to beat myself up. I can stop the momentum that I may be trying to shut someone else down, and just recognize, oh yeah, that's just my humanity at work. I found it to be so helpful.
Just my humanity at work. It's just my brain trying to protect me. It's got very old hardware and very old ideas about what it means to protect. But that's all it's trying to do, is keep us safe. And I think that's really freeing and normalizing. It's really freeing for people. Oh, this is just my brain trying to keep me safe and makes me hate this person. I don't need to. I don't need to get back at that person, because that's a common thing too, is for the brain to do, is want revenge.
Yeah.
I'm noticing we're heading towards the bottom of the hour, and I'm curious, for those of you who are here, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or if you want to speak up, just let us know. If you're enjoying this conversation or not, or it's something else you want to hear, I would love to hear that. So here's a question from Robin. When do you propose this work to a company? How do you connect your work to the ROI for the company?
Want to go for that, Lori, or would you like me to?
Why don't you start?
I think it's the wrong question to ask. And it makes perfect sense to me why a leader would ask that question. So I have business training. I'm an MBA. Like, ROI makes the world go around. It makes perfect sense to me why all leaders would ask that question. So when it does get asked of me, what I generally try to do, and I can talk about what we did at Salesforce, is help them take a look at, well, what is the soft impact you're seeing? Well, if someone hasn't invested yet in coaching, and the only way they will invest in it is if you can show an ROI, that I'm not sure that's going to be a very long conversation. But what I can tell is, like at Salesforce, what we do regularly, data is important. Like, businesses invest in programs there's a very tangible impact. And so what we did is I think you probably still do, I'm not actually sure, Lori, but there's a survey that goes out every 6 months where everyone rates what they're getting from it. Like, how is this impacting me and my confidence? How is this impacting me as it pertains to my ability to lead my team, et cetera, et cetera? How, and then you can do net promoter sorts of metrics, like how likely is it that I would refer team coaching to a colleague? And those numbers, including the qualitative data, like, tell us something about how coaching has influenced you, as well as tell us something that you'd like to see changed or altered in some way. Like, if you add all that up and then have a conversation with with the organization, but specifically the sponsor, in my experience, that data really can tell a pretty good story, along from just all of the word of mouth that happens. That's how the program in Salesforce grew. My leader, my boss's boss's boss came to me and said, "Hey Clay, I don't need you to show me ROI just because it's so apparent to me how much people are finding value in this stuff. Continue to get the data from the self-reported surveys that you're putting out, but it's just quite evident." But I'm not sure I'd ever be able to prove out an ROI because you have no idea, like from a statistically valid standpoint, you have no idea how the team would have operated without coaching. And there's so many variables at play. It's just really, really hard to prove out ROI.
One of the questions that I think is quite powerful is how much time does this team currently spend on drama? Or how much does it lose to drama? Drama being, oh, this person did this and that person is sending nasty emails, or, emails back and forth and having to figure out who likes whom and all that kind of stuff that can be cleaned up when we teach them some things about their brain and teach them interactive skills and empathy and the shared agreements. So I think that's not ROI exactly, but that's a way to look at time lost. How much time are you losing to that? Because that can be cleaned up.
That's a good
and
one.
then Rob, the first part of Robin's question, how do you propose this work? When do you propose this work to a company? So Clay started this organically, and now you're working on your own, and I imagine on request, right? I mean, that's the only way I've ever done it is on request. Or if I'm already in the company doing some training, because I do a lot of training, I also let them know, there's a group over here that might be useful for them to have a little team coaching because they seem to be at each other a little bit.
Yeah. What I do now that I have my own company is I try to talk less and have them experience more. So I can talk about the benefits of coaching, et cetera, but tell you what, why don't you show up at my workshop on Friday? Or let me just take an hour and I'll work with your team. Let's put all the talking aside. I want to get people into an experience because that just is so most often super powerful. And frankly, if it's not powerful, well, then we can end the discussion and we can get on with our lives. But more often than not, people have a really terrific experience in these coaching sessions. So that's the best way I know how to build conviction with a leader. And more and more, I'm less interested in working with organizations if the leader first isn't bought in.
Yeah. You're really committed to the leaders doing their work too.
Yeah. If a leader is coming to me and saying, I've got a team over there you need to come in and fix, well, that would be a fun conversation for me to have with the leader to begin to explore, well, how did we get here? If we were all to take responsibility for co-creating the environment that we're in now, what's your part in this? I'm not slinging arrows at anyone, but I do believe, and generally most people would understand, that we all create these environments and these cultures by working all together. So yeah, I want to have some skin in the game from the leaders if I'm going to work with their teams.
Yeah, I had an experience not so long ago, not having anything to do with Salesforce, of a leader not quite buying in, and it's the team. And that's a dangerous thing. And I think that's pretty common for team coaches to experience. Leaders say, hey, my team needs work. They're not cooperating, or go fix them. And that's just a red flag that says the leader might not be willing. And even if you ask them, are you willing to do the work yourself as well? Oh, yeah. Well, it might be a good idea to start with them, because if they're not willing to shift and grow themselves, they might be creating a toxic environment within their team.
Yeah.
So
and I also like to impress upon them, if you're really wanting your culture to shift, it's going to be really challenging for people underneath you, leader, to begin showing up a little bit more vulnerably, a little bit more open if they're not seeing that behavior modeled up front. It's just too dangerous. And we talked about our brains, how we're wired to scan looking for threats. Well, if I'm not seeing an open invitation by the leader modeling that, that's going to be a real scary thing for me to jump into.
Yeah. So there's more questions. Suzanne asks, would love to hear a bit more about the teaming program overall, and in particular, how do you create a sense of community amongst the team? So,
I'd love for you to take this on, Lori, because you're currently working with the team.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the teaming program, specifically this one in Salesforce, is as teams collect, well, there's a couple different ways we do this. We have regional teams, so we're working with the whole set of people in a particular region, which might be 10 to 20 people, and giving them some basic tools, some brain tools, some understanding of toxic behaviors, that kind of thing, some looking at how do we belong, diversity, how do we work with diversity, how do we be more inclusive, that kind of thing. So there's a kind of a learning that happens on a regional level. And then when the smaller teams collect together, then for a period of 3 to 6 months, then we coach them and we can integrate some of those learnings that have been happening on the regional level. I'm hoping this makes sense. It'll make sense in my head. And so there's both a bit of training about concepts of how to be in relationship, how to have empathy, how to have agreements. And Clay, I'll get you to share your slide in just a moment, because I think that'd be really helpful. And then we just roll that out as teams get together and finish a project. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. And this was Clay's structure to begin with. Create agreements in the beginning, check in with them in the middle of this project. How's it going? What else do you need? And there might be some specific need they have, or might be something from the training that had happened that they can bring in. And then there's a completion. What have you learned? What do you want to bring to your next team? So it's not just left behind, but there's something each person, each individual can take with them. Next time, my teaming agreements, I want to make sure that we say up front what we need, that kind of thing. Will you share your slide?
Yeah. Oh, the host has disabled participant.
Oh, sorry. I gotcha.
Okay.
Whoops. I should have set that up a bit. There you go.
Cool. Let me try one more time. Oh, there we go. Okay, so, there's 8,000 books about what leads to effective teaming, and this is the 8,001st book that I have authored. It's not a book, it's a slide. Basically, what I saw working at Salesforce is that there were brilliant people in every team, yet some teams really struggled and other teams flourished, and I got really curious about it. And it became quite apparent to me that the teams that flourished reliably had a high level of these 3 colored circles. They had a high level of compassion, meaning everyone on the team saw each other as human beings, not just as pawns on a chessboard. Like they really understood what each person wanted from the experience, how they defined success. And they also understood what the fears were, what they were nervous about. Now, when you have a team where you've got like a salesperson that just cares about primarily getting a big, and I don't mean to generalize here, but a lot of salespeople are focused on commission checks, where like an innovation person might be focused on coming up with a long-term vision. Like really beginning to see each other as people is something that's going to be really important if you're going to be able to move forward as a single organization. So that's the compassion piece. Shared vision is getting really clear on, are we all hiking up the same mountaintop, or are you going that direction and I'm going that direction? When teams don't have a shared vision, that's usually where drama starts. And again, if you have a diverse team, salespeople, creative people, strategic people, you all may have in common this idea around client success as shared vision. But if you really dig deeper, everyone really is thinking success is differently for me personally. So if you expose that and if you begin to understand the diversity and how people are defining success, you can begin to create opportunities where everyone wins. And you can begin to explore the question such as, well, how do we operate in a way in which we all can support each other to get exactly what we want, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third piece is clear agreements. And Lori just mentioned that every team within Ignite Salesforce does what's called designing a team alliance. And we were inspired and took a lot of that language and a lot of the format directly from CRR Global, but we put a little bit of our spin on it. And really what it is just it's a set of guiding principles that a team believes will be required for them, their unique group of people, to create that shared vision. that everyone wants. And ideally, if a team is really bought into this, which we hope they are, is that they can hold each other accountable and come back to this conversation on a regular cadence and ask themselves, how are we doing? Are we living up to the agreements that we all believed were important for us to be successful? And just having that touchstone was really helpful for the team to kind of get off the hamster wheel for a minute and let's remind ourselves about how we're being together in the work. And I think that's the most important piece. It's having some mechanism for a team to pause on some cadence to stop and remind themselves about the human side of what they're doing. And then the last thing I'm not going to talk about in much length, but it's what's fundamentally changed my life is this thing called conscious leadership, which is some of the neuroscience, but basically it's asking each individual in the team to begin waking up and seeing how we're creating all of the outcomes that we're experiencing in front of us. And so at Salesforce, the last year or two that I was there, we had a separate program from the team coaching to begin training people to wake up and see how they are, what's driving their reactive behaviors on teams or in other aspects of their lives. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Clay, for sharing that. I think it's a very nice overview of that direction that, and what you created and how you took that forward. Very concise, compassion, shared vision, and clear agreements. And it sounds so simple, when you put it in these three, this Venn diagram and these three things, like, yeah, sure, just build some compassion and some clear agreements. But even agreements can be a huge piece of work for people. And I loved how you talk about get off the hamster wheel. Because, we'll create agreements and then, churn away on that hamster wheel and busy. And we forget about it because we just drop into our habits and forget that there are human beings over there because we're trying to be our robot selves. Interact with each other as, human doings.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Let's see. So to finish that question, Suzanne, I think, to create a sense of community amongst a team is a lot of which is a lot of what Clay just talked about. It's about compassion and revealing themselves and being a bit vulnerable. When people are vulnerable together, man, it just creates, it's a safe space to start with. It just creates such trust and community. We're wired for belonging. So we get our brains to, the anxiety, we can get that to calm down. We can use this sense of desire to belong to really create a sense of community. Moving on, Ann Jones asks about, given COVID and the fractures often exposed, how do you mend teams? If I start that answer, Clay, I'm sure you have other things to add in. But for me, it comes back to this same thing about vulnerability and getting them off the hamster wheel. People are going from meeting to meeting to meeting. I think it's insane what's been happening in these 2 years with COVID. Like humanity has just gotten lost between meetings, Zoom meetings, and getting people together and having them talk about what's going on for them, how they're struggling, perhaps normalizing stress and struggle can help them understand where some of the breaks come from. If people are really stressed out and they're burning out, it's really hard to be in great relationship with others. We're just normalizing some of that. What would you add, Clay?
Yeah, I'll just continue your thought. Yeah, it's hard. And so just what a comfort it might be to open up a conversation, just, again, acknowledging it's hard. Like, yeah, this is a crazy time we're all in. How might we support each other?
Yeah.
Understanding that the playing field is different now than it's ever been for us. And having each person begin to share, is there anything new about this experience that you'd like support from the team, or at least just the team to know? I've got 2 kids at home now, and I've got some new boundaries. This is really stressing me out. I just want you to know that about me.
Yeah.
So just, again, stopping the hamster wheel, let's just continue with that analogy, and opening up a conversation. What's it like to be you in this new chapter, and how might we be together in a way that's going to support us?
One of the groups I work with has one of the organizations I work with has quite a few young very young people just out of university, and in London. And what people do in London is they share apartments. And so when COVID hit, there were people who had working from home with 4 other flatmates, and they're sharing the kitchen, and everybody's all stressed out, and just everybody saying this is how it is. I didn't get the cool space from the meeting space today, not my turn, and acknowledging the amount of stress that created. I think that really helped.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope that answers the question. And it's and spending time. One of the teams I worked with was trying to mend themselves and the impact of being so separated. They hadn't spent any time as a team on the phone, on Zoom, or in person. This was during the 6 months ago when they were starting to come back. We've never spent time together, really. Okay, great. Well, now that we're here having a conversation together and having a bit of compassion for one another, what will we do? We'll get together on a Wednesday and have a meeting, in person together, because we can. Other teams have a meeting at least once a week on Zoom if you can't go in person. How are you doing? It's just a check-in, and it sounds simple, but it goes a long way to having people see each other as people again.
Sure.
So for an external coach wanting to diversify into team coaching, what advice would you have about where to start in terms of training, qualification, something else?
Well, so I love the CRR Global, the organization that has that ORSC, again, organizational relationship systems coaching. The way I started this program at Salesforce in the US, and as soon as it began to pick up speed and I was asked to scale it, I immediately thought, who do I know that's a brilliant ORSC coach overseas? And so I reached out to the faculty at ORSC, and I immediately got to Lori. So every one of the coaches on Lori's team is trained in the same stuff. Now I imagine there's probably other philosophies, other schools that teach this stuff, but I do give a high five to that organization, and I think that the shared language and shared methodology that Lori's whole team and myself used really was quite effective, and I think they do a lot of really great work over there.
Yeah. So crrglobal.com, I put the URL in the chat box. You can check that out. At least start with there's a 2-day program. At least start with that and get some sense of what is it to do systems work, systems thinking, which is different than just group coaching. So for me, that was a turning point from individual coaching to working with a group. This is a system. It's a collective. I need to see it as a collective, not a group of individuals, but as a collective. And that changes everything. I highly recommend that you do some of that work. Mark is asking, let's see, great discussion. Thanks, great. Yay. Have you got experience or breakthroughs when it comes to improving collaboration between senior exec leaders? Often in tech, leaders grow and stay in one swim lane or discipline. I know you were just doing something that would fall right in that category, Clay, I think.
Sorry, which question are you looking at?
Mark Cullen.
Have you got experience when it comes to improving collaboration between senior exec leaders, often in tech leaders? Excuse me, it's really kind of the same sorts of prompts and the same sorts of coaching I would say to address this situation as many others. Again, if you use the framework, compassion, shared vision, clear agreements. I mean, if you think about shared vision, if you've got two tech leaders that could easily silo themselves, if I'm understanding this correctly, grow and stay in one swim lane, great. Yeah, so, well, what do you have in common? What's the shared vision? Without a shared vision and a shared commitment to that vision, it's going to be really hard for people to operate in a way that's going to be mutually beneficial. So I would just get those folks in a conversation and just begin to ask, like, if we were to really know you, what's success? And then once you hear what everyone's vision of success is, you help them understand and at least to wake up somewhat to, so what's common between what you're wanting? get them anchored in something that they're all wanting to commit to. And then from there, all the agreements and everything else, and you can build compassion that comes, you can continue to build that upon that shared commitment.
Something else I would add to that is if it's senior execs, for me, it's the question of, is the team, these senior execs, are they trying to become a team? Because so often senior execs are focused on their downlines in their department that they're leading. And then they come together and they have an occasional conversation as a senior exec team. But how do whoever's the sponsor, my question is, does this team want to become a team where they are the team that leads the organization, as opposed to a collection of individuals that lead parts of the organization? And it's a really different thing. Are they looking out or are they looking in? If they're looking in at each other, then there's an opportunity. Well, first of all, help them just recognize that. Oh, we're looking out, or we're looking out down to, our departments, or are we looking in? Are we going to be a collective? Are we going to have a shared vision about where we're going with the whole company? And do we want to work on that? So I think that's question number one. Do we want to work on that and become a team, like really a team, and not just a collection of executives? And then we can work from there. And with tech people, and this is part of why I was an engineer a long time ago. I love tech as well as touchy-feely kind of stuff. But this is why I bring in neuroscience, is helping people understand what their brains are doing. And it's just chemistry. It's chemistry that's having us react in certain ways. It's adrenaline and cortisol that has us be upset, and we get, at each other rather than collectively buying into a vision together. When they understand that, I think it's really helpful. Then, meaning understand it from a science perspective, from a physiological perspective. This is just what's happening. It's normal, rather than, we're working with emotions. No, just work with chemistry. It's the same thing. So that's what I add in for the tech people. Mark, I hope some of those comments were helpful. There's a couple more questions here. Clay, I think we might have a couple more minutes and then we'll complete. Great. Inga asked, what would be good first step to engage remote salespeople focused on their individual wins into team coaching? You've probably worked with salespeople more than I've done, right? Remote salespeople. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to override that. So here's the thing. Are they a team? Are those salespeople really a team? And we define, Clay, I don't know if you use the same definition as a team. They're a collection of people who are interdependent. Is there an interdependency between these people, or do they just operate on their own? If there's no interdependency, maybe one depends on another for something. If they're so low in their work, it's hard to call them a team and hard to bring them together and hard to have them care about being a team together. So yeah. I think that's a question to ask. If there's no interdependency, it's really hard. And do they have a collective vision? That's the other part of the definition. Are they working towards something, or are they in competition with one another?
Right. And so, team coaching is a tool, individual coaching is a tool. There's lots of tools out there. I always love to start the conversation with anyone. What do you want? Like, what's missing now? Or if you could have things different in 6 months, what would be different? And if they give you an answer there, and then what might you sense is in the way of you getting to what you want in 6 months? And it might be a relational challenge, it might be an individual challenge, it might be both. And then from that point, you can determine, team coaching may play a part in this. Maybe in conjunction with some individual coaching, depending on what what's going on.
Yeah. So with a few minutes left, I want to let everyone know about a Schuck-Svensson program that we offer. Before I do that, Clay, anything you want to plug from 1560? You offer something for collective?
What I want to, well, we do coaching. We offer team support and individual support. We have workshops and coaching. And I'm the biggest fan of Lori, so go look at Schuck-Svensson. If they can't take care of you, then call me up and we'll see what we can do.
Great, thank you, Clay. So I want to tell you all about Rewire to Relate. Does that look like the right, are you seeing that, Clay? Rewire to Relate. Yeah, okay. So Rewire to Relate is a program we put together based on the work we've been doing for a lot of years, working in organizations, training everybody in an organization to create a collective culture about how to use their brains and how to relate to well together. And we put it online. So we have blended or hybrid learning programs. And this one, I'm terribly excited about it. We have yet another new version, super polished and shiny. It's beautiful. It's a 6-week virtual program. So we kick it off with a webinar, and then most of the content is online. But here's the purpose of it. I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's about understanding your brain, like we've talked about a couple of times, and understanding where the threats come from, how our behaviors are driven by the brain, and learning to tame that so you can work better with others and have the impact that you want. So you tame your emotional brain to have the impact you want. Stress plays into this equation with the brain. If you're really stressed, heading towards burnout, it is really hard to control those emotions, really hard to be intentional. So this is about being conscious and intentional, learning how your humanity or your team's humanity either helps create teamwork or gets in the way. The structure, this is where I was going a few moments ago. So there's online content. There are 5 chapters in this program. Each chapter, we do a chapter a week. Each chapter online, 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how much time you want to spend on that. It's independent. You can do 5 minutes at a time or do it all at once. And there's little videos, short written pieces. There's also extra reading if you want. Exercises to make it real, and a learning group. So there's some social learning. There's a group of 4 that you meet with and go more in depth with how you're using the material, how you're using your brain, how you're learning to manage yourself and have the impact that you want. Great conversations happen in there. That's everyone's favorite part of the program, usually. And if this is offered in an organization, you can have this be people across the organization so they get to know each other, or these can be team members. So I have run this for a team where everybody has, the team has collective conversations about what they're learning about their brain, how their brains are creating reactive behaviors between them, and what they want to do as a team or as a system to help each other manage that, reduce stress so they can be better collaborators. Here's just comments in photo. I think you're putting a link in the chat box for how to find out more about Rewire to Relate. Some of my favorite comments from coaches who took this program. Both coaches are taking this program and internal folks are taking this, and team members. It's a collection of people. But a lot of coaches take this to learn some material about themselves and take some tools to their teams also. So they get a little bit of understanding about the brain. We have a webinar that we're running on Wednesday about what is Rewired to Relate. So you can learn more about that on Wednesday. And anything else I want to say about that? And we start our next program on the 16th of February. So if you're interested, please get in touch with us. If you want to come to the free 1-hour session on Wednesday, happy to have you. And if you're interested in the program starting the 16th of Feb, just let us know in the chat box. We'll make sure that we get in touch with you. So that's that. Next time, we're going to be talking about the culture of belonging. And Dorothy Ashton will be joining me on that. And I know you know her, Clay. Yes, so I want to stop sharing here and just come back. You don't need to know anything about neuroscience surge to take this program. We teach you everything you need to know. Come, do it.
Don't let the idea of neuroscience get in the way. You don't need to be a techie or technical type of person. It's a very human, anyone can understand it the way that Lori presents the material.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming. If you have any final comments, I'd love to know what you think of this format of webinars where I'm in conversation with somebody. I loved it. Thank you, Clay, so much for being my guest and for being such a brilliant guy and sharing so much of your wisdom and knowledge.